Can I please have everyone to my left introduce themselves? Starting with my left. Introduce themselves.
Ron Castorina, Richmond County Republican.
Michael Rendino, Bronx County Republican.
Simon Shalom, Kings Republic.
Frederick Humane, Manhattan Republican.
Michael Michelle, Queens Republican.
Alan Shogan, Manhattan Democrat.
John Flateau, Kings County Democrat.
Perez, Bronx Democrat.
Marie Guastella, Richmond Democrat.
Michael Ryan, Executive Director.
Sandell, Deputy Executive Director.
Pamela Perkins, Administrative Manager.
Lena M. Crispino, Director of Personnel.
Mulder, Council of Commissioners. Steve Neighbor, Council of Commissioners. Steve Richmond, General Counsel. Rafael Espino, Deputy General Counsel.
All right, the issue is the minutes on 10/7 and 9/30. Has everyone had an opportunity to review them? Is there a motion to adopt the minutes? Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second it back, I'm sorry, I could say actually on October 7th.
Okay.
So we can have that.
Second, October 2nd.
Okay. October 7th? Yes. Okay, so the mission, all in favor? Anybody opposed or abstaining? The motion carries. The minutes from 10/7 will show an abstention of Maria Costello. Please post the minutes on the website. Commissioner Castellino?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
You'll note on the agenda that under my name is the anti-nepotism policy. This board has perpetually, since its inception, taken harsh criticism on the issue of nepotism, sometimes rightly and sometimes wrongly. Nonetheless, I believe it's incumbent upon the commissioners to take proactive measures to perpetuate good government ideals, which I believe we all share, and to do so in a public way as to instill greater public confidence in what we do. One measure is the proposal I've placed upon today's agenda. If there is any doubt or concern that this board does not have an anti-nepotism policy that should be adhered to in the strictest of fashions, I would like to dispel that doubt or concern by spreading forth on the record the relevant policies and procedures on the issue and then follow up with a motion for the commissioners to vote upon. In the board's policies and procedures relating to employee conduct, reference is made to the city's conflict of interest regulations. Specifically, the standards on political activity in Section 3A provides that certain provisions of Section 2604 of the city charter apply to all BOE employees. Particularly applicable is Section 2604 sub B 3 of the charter, which provides no public servant shall use or attempt to use his position as a public servant to obtain any financial gain, contract, license, privilege, or other private or personal advantage, direct or indirect, for the public servant or a person or firm associated with the public servant. Section 2601 sub 5 of the charter defines associated to include spouse, domestic partner, child, parent or sibling, or a person or firm that the public servant has a business or financial relationship with. Section 2601 sub 19 of the charter defines public servant as all officials, officers, and employees of the city. Based on the foregoing, no city employee, including all BOE employees, can engage in any act benefiting themselves or a person associated with them as defined in the city charter. In addition, it should be noted that BOE employees have received and continue to receive anti-corruption training by DOI and ethics training on a regular basis by COIB. At this time, I'd like to make a motion for the following. That the commissioners of the New York City Board of Elections publicly reaffirm the board's current anti-nepotism policy. 2, provide a copy of this policy to all of its employees. And 3, post this anti-nepotism policy conspicuously in each of the board's borough offices throughout the city.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Anybody opposed or abstain? The motion carries.
Commissioner, I'd like to ask Director Michael. sorry, Mike Bryan, about, we have a position on vetting also, don't we? And what is our position on vetting?
Well, presently, we have, there's a little bit of a difference, but it's more form over substance. In terms of, and I presume specifically, Commissioner, you're referring to the issue of whether or not we inquire of employees whether they have, or prospective employees, whether they have any criminal background prior to coming in. As to permanent employees, that question, they have to fill out the same questionnaire that every other city agency employee has to fill out, which is what I'll refer to as the NICAPS questionnaire. And in the NICAPS employment application questionnaire, one of the questions is, have you ever been convicted of a crime? With respect to temporary employees who do not go through the NICAPS questionnaire process, we have on our questionnaire that we ask employees, our application I should say, have you ever been convicted of a crime? That has been historically the method used by the city to deal with folks in a non-law enforcement capacity. In law enforcement agencies, they go quite a bit deeper, but for non-law enforcement, that's the question that's been asked. It does not ask, have you ever been arrested? You'll note that clearly. It says, have you ever been convicted of a crime? In other words, a matter that would have been of public record. So what we're asking them to do is what every other city agency asks them to do, which is to tell us something that we're going to find out anyway eventually. So you may as well let us know up front so we can appropriately evaluate it before the hiring process is complete.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the next item on the agenda, I believe that Commissioner Flateau wants to join the Communications Voter Registration and Outreach Committee, formerly held by Julie Dent, and also wants to join the Management Information Systems and Services Subcommittee, also held by Commissioner Dent. Is that correct?
Yes.
I approve that appointment. I have also extended to the two commissioners any invitation if they want to join the subcommittee. However, we would have to find a Republican counterpart.
Mr. President, do you need, is there a need for a Republican counterpart on either of those? Because if there is, I'm willing.
Yeah, I'd like to get on legislative affairs.
Do we have a Republican other than Commissioner Randino? Has any interest in that?
I'll do it.
All right, Commissioner Michelle will appoint Commissioner Humane. All right, there being no other requests, please update the subcommittee list for us. Thank you. Commissioner, Mike Ryan?
Yes. Commissioners, it should have been attached to your, to the agenda, and it wasn't. I'm tracking down where the copies may have ended up. But under item 3A, we received a notice last week after the commissioners' meeting, the last week's commissioners' meeting, for a request to testify at a New York City Oversight Council hearing on October 23rd, 2014 at 10 o'clock. And it is with respect to a bill introduced, number 493 by Councilmember Kalos, and I believe there's a co-sponsor, and Councilmember Williams, to discuss further compliance with the, I believe it's commonly referred to as Local Law Section 29, which delineates a laundry list of agencies that are supposed to give out voter registration election materials, similar to the way that the State Department of Motor Vehicles does it, or did it before by giving out paper registration forms. And there is a movement afoot, not only in the city but in the state, to be more electronically based than we are presently, to reduce the number of paper applications that we get. And the city is exploring ways to go ahead and do that. It should be noted that on March 11th, 2014, it's been previously reported, but just to remind everyone, we stopped receiving paper applications from the Department of Motor Vehicles and received electronic communications only from the Department of Motor Vehicles since that time. So it's what we're doing with the state, and apparently the city council is looking to expand that. I think that irrespective of whether we take a position on expanding it, I think that clearly should be the board's position. I would recommend that. But in the event that the board elected not to take a position, I think that our participation in the hearing process is necessary so that we can weigh in on the issues related to implementation in the event that the city expands it and wants to do more electronically based exchanges, so that our MIS department can give its opinion as well as to how the interface between the various city agencies would best occur. So I'm asking for permission to direct staff to prepare testimony with respect to that, and certainly direction on the parameters of the testimony, whether we should take an affirmative position or we should limit our testimony simply to operational issues.
Yeah. Our job is to enforce the law. If the law is that we have to do this, then we need to do this, and we need to work to do it as smoothly as possible. Whether or not I agree with the law is a completely different issue and not really relevant, because what I think doesn't matter. The point is, if this law is in effect, then we need to come up with the best way to handle it. So I think we should go, and I think that we shouldn't take a position on whether we think it's good, bad, or indifferent. We need to participate and figure out the best way to do it, perhaps, since all the city agencies, or most of them, are involved, perhaps do it, or some other sort of technical agency also ought to get involved. But certainly our staff, and we can probably be helpful, and perhaps they would use the same sort of system that the state uses with us, because we've already gone through various glitches with the motor voter downloads and whatnot. So I think we ought to testify, but I don't think that the agency ought to take a position, because that tends to get political, but we ought to participate to the extent that it is a law and we have to comply with it. We should do it as simply and as easily for the agency and for the other agencies as possible. So I would move to authorize you to go to that extent and participate and prepare testimony and provide the city council with some of the practical knowledge that we've acquired over the past couple of years with the motor voter.
Is there a second? All in favor? Anybody opposed or abstained? Motion carries. All right, does anyone want to add anything to the agenda? Taking up executive session?
Yes.
Anyone else?
And I would-
Personnel?
And I would ask for a motion to table item 3B.
Move to table item 3B. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed or abstained? Motion carries. Is there a motion to go into executive session for personnel?
Moved by
Is it,
Is there a litigation issue?
is there a litigation
the
issue?
one that they got started.
Okay, so we can do that first, and then we can do the other items after that.
All right, so we're moving to executive session for personnel and litigation. Is there a second? All in favor? Anybody opposed or abstained? All right, the motion carries. If you're not back when we come back, our next meeting will be next Tuesday at 1:30. Following action, Sherwin Suss is hereby appointed as the new ACO at the outgoing salary upon the departure of John Luisi.
The old one, though.
And it's the goal of the board to retain employees for a period of at least 6 months to provide sufficient continuity, training, and acclimation for all employees. And it's in no way intended to, nor in any manner reduce, lessen, diminish, nor impair the rights and obligations of the Board of Elections of the City of New York as set forth in section 3300 of the election law. And that motion carried 8 in favor, 1 abstaining, and 1 against. Who voted? I abstained, Commissioner Roger abstained, and Commissioner Andino opposed. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn executive session?
So moved.
All in favor? Anybody opposed or abstained? The motion carries.